G'day there, you're watching the Aussie BIM Guru, and today I've got a pretty exciting video topic for the channel and for people that use Dynamo, which is how to turn your Dynamo scripts into a toolbar. And you don't need Python or C#, or C++. So very interesting topic. So I'd like to thank Daniel Glober for telling me about this tool via my Gmail. We were discussing about Dynamo separately, and then I happened to notice that he had a toolbar. And I said, oh, what's that? That looks like you're doing some PyRevit or something like that, which is one way to do toolbars. And he said, no, I'm actually using something different. Lo and behold, it was something really impressive. I can't wait to share it. So essentially, we can usually use C++ to create add-ins in Revit, or we can use PyRevit to package Python scripts into toolbars as well. The hard thing is that most of these two techniques are not really available to most people, because I guess C++ is quite hard to learn. You need to have a really good understanding of the language of C and also Revit API. So most people don't usually make it this far in their journey towards making add-ins. A lot of people just finish at Dynamo and they give up once they see how complicated this is. So PyRevit is something that's come around recently. It's a really great tool. It has some great out-of-the-box tools packaged into it, but essentially it lets you package Python scripts and deploy tools to toolbars using this tool. So the hard thing here is you need to know Python quite well, because you have to write your script pretty much entirely within Python. So it's quite hard again for people that don't really have a good understanding of the Python programming language. But it's easier than C++, I'd say, from my experience. So the benefits of both of these, which you're not going to get out of this method, is it's easier to deploy, it's much more portable, it's easier to take to another machine quite quickly and install, especially a C++ add-in, and the execution speed will be faster because you're writing in native code versus using Dynamo. You can still write Python within Dynamo to make your script faster and more efficient, so we're not necessarily going to be losing that much efficiency, but it's not going to be as efficient as these two methods. But the main con, as I've sort of pointed out, is that most of us just don't have time to learn this much programming. A lot of us are architects or engineers or even builders, and we didn't really study programming or computer science at university. So when we have to learn programming languages, it's very hard for us. It takes a lot of time. And a lot of us have already had to learn Dynamo as it is, which was hard enough for a lot of us already to master. So to go and expect us to learn Python and C++, it's a lot of work. Another big con is that PyRevit and C, they rely on us abandoning the custom packages that people have developed for Dynamo. Essentially, if you want something that a custom package can do, you have to basically rewrite it in your own script in both cases. So we have to do it all ourselves, which isn't great because there's so much material available from custom developers in Dynamo already. So this is a typical learning process. I'll get to the point soon. I just want to frame the context of all of this. So a lot of people begin in Dynamo, pick up some Python along the way to get better, maybe go to PyRevit as well, and eventually some of them will make it to C++. But there's definitely a drop-off rate where most people won't get past Dynamo. So how about this? Why don't we just stick with Dynamo and get a little bit better in Python in order to work within the IronPython shell in Dynamo. So how? So finally got to it. It's called Dino or Dino. It's an interesting tool. Essentially, it's available on the following website. It's free. It definitely works in Revit 2017 to 2019. I haven't been able to test trying to force it into Revit 2020's plugin folders. I don't believe it's been tested or built for Revit 2020 yet. I've reached out to the company to try and get some more information. Haven't heard back yet. It's been tested in Dynamo 1.2, 1.3, and 2.0. However, I've been testing it in 2.0.3 successfully, so it's been working for me in the highest version that 2019 supports. Essentially, it lets you organize your scripts much more efficiently and deploy them. So in this case, the thing that really drew me to it is you can actually package your scripts into toolbars, which is very impressive, and it's really intuitive and easy to put them together. It also lets you browse through your scripts in an alternative manner, so I'll show you that as well before we jump into the toolbars themselves. But essentially, this is something that I built in about an hour, and each one of these buttons is a Dynamo script or a set of Dynamo scripts that can be deployed like a toolbar. So you can click on these buttons and it will execute a script. There's some different ways to collect your inputs, which I'll show you. So for example, collecting the active selection is a little bit more tricky than it would be in a standard Dynamo script where you do something like select model elements, but very efficient. So it's been developed by Prorubim. So they're a Russian company that develop a lot of solutions for the industry. And you can find this on their website for free. You will need to create an account and you'll need to put it in a shopping cart. But essentially once it's in there, you can just download it for free. There's no cost. So it's amazing. So great work to the developer, Alexei, as well. I'm still waiting to hear back from him as well about the development of this tool. But yeah, brilliant work and amazing that it's free as well. So in this video, I'm just going to cover how to run scripts using Dyno, sort of like Dynamo Player. I'll then show how to gather some standard inputs and then how to package it all into a toolbar. Sorry, it's my cat. So I'll be using Dynamo 2.0.3 today. I won't be doing a lot of script building. I'll also be doing a lot of script packaging and running. But this is what I've built all my scripts in today. So without further ado, let's jump into it and let's have some fun. So I'm just in Revit at the moment and I've installed Dyno. So I'm just going to open up a project. And the first thing you'll notice every time you open your first model in a session of Revit, you'll get a little loading screen in the middle that's telling you that Dyno is opening Dynamo Core. It has to do this the first time you open a model in your session because it's going to run Dynamo in the background essentially, so you won't see it when you run these buttons. It usually takes maybe about as long as it would take to open Dynamo, if not just a little bit longer. So that is one downside to this. You will have to put up with that. But once it's in, essentially you should find it under Manage, and it will nestle itself next to Dynamo and Dynamo Player, which is pretty cute. But let's just open it up. So we'll click on Dyno Browser, and the first thing you'll see is nothing. So it's a little bit confusing. So what we actually need to do is we need to go to the settings by right clicking. And again, that sort of threw me off at first as well. I was like, where's my settings? If you right click on the white space, settings, you need to add a directory with some scripts. So I'm just going to navigate for now just to this root folder. And you can see that it creates a little folder hierarchy. So what I may do first is I might just create a blank Dynamo script to show you how this all works. So I'm going to open Dynamo as well. You can open Dynamo whilst Dyno is running. There's no issues that get caused by doing so that I've seen so far. But essentially Dyno means you don't have to have Dynamo open to run your scripts. A little bit like Dynamo Player, but even more packaged, and you'll see what I mean. Let's create a really basic script. Let's just create a sum. So I'm just going to create two numbers, and this is similar to an example they put on their website actually. So you're welcome to just jump straight on their website and see if you can learn from what they've got on there. The material's quite good. I found it pretty intuitive, but for beginners it might be a bit harder than what I'm going to show you. But anyway, so sorry, not equals. I'm just going to do one number plus another number. And what I'll do is, I'll just right click on these and go is input and is input. And I'll just call these N1 and N2, which I think is pretty much the same as their example. And then I'll just get a watch node. And you can see that obviously 0 plus 5 is 5. I'll make this an output by right clicking it. And I'm just going to save this script. And I might just save this to my desktop first. So I'm going to open a more complex directory a bit later on. So I'll just just call this test, and I'll call my scripts testing1. So I'll close Dynamo. I'll reopen Dyno Browser. Go to my settings, and I'll just remove that path, and I'll just add my test folder instead. Note you can also hide Dynamo Player as well. If you don't want your users to run Dynamo Player, you just want them to run Dyno. Easy. You can also show up Dyno on the add-ins tab if you want as well. Okay, so now you can see this line is my script essentially. This is how Dyno sees it. If I expand it, you'll see that we see my inputs as well. So I can change these to different numbers before I run my script. Obviously this isn't a toolbar. This is basically how Dyno packages your script. So I'll show you the toolbar after this. To run your script, you just double click. And Dyno is going to restart. Just because I've opened Dynamo, it needs to restart the Dynamo core after I open Dynamo. It's pretty cool. Every time I've seen this this loading button, it's always been different. They must have a lot of different versions of it, so at least it's fun to watch. And it tells you how long the script took to run, which is pretty impressive. And at the moment, I can't see my output, which is interesting. So I might need to might need to go check my script. You can just open in Dynamo by right clicking, and this will open up the script again. But yeah, at the moment it looks like we can't see the output. Come on, Dynamo. I found it can be a little bit slow to open Dynamo directly through Dino, but it gets there eventually. I'll try making that an output as well. See what happens. Actually, I might need to just rename this node. That could be why it's not showing up. I think that's it. So if you make a change to your script and you want this to update, all you have to do is right click and just go rescan workspace storage. And then we can rerun the script. It won't always restart Dynamo Core. It's only if you've just come out of Dynamo. So if I reran the script after this time, it wouldn't have to rerun. I'm probably going to not really focus on this part too often. I'm going to go through to the toolbars pretty quickly. So go on their website to check out all the basics. There you go. You can see that our output now comes out as 5. I'll just show you as well really quickly that you can actually put a lot of pretty complicated inputs in here. So you can do things like category dropdowns. You can even do things that come from custom packages. So if you have a dropdown from, say, a package like Archilab, such as the Sheets dropdown, which isn't out of the box, it will still be able to package it into an interface. So if I just get my Sheets dropdown, and I'll just find it. Oh, actually, it's from. Sorry, I'll just look up Sheets Archilab. I find some of these scripts can be quite hard sometimes to find. I'll just look for it here instead. Sheets. So I believe this is from Archilab. I'll just quickly cross-check it's from Archilab using Monocle, which is an interesting custom node that annotates. There we go. So it's from Rhythm. What I'll do is just make this an input, and I'll just say select sheet, and I'll save and close, and I'll rescan my workspace. And this should now add that extra input. And now you can see I can pick my sheet. It needs to run Dynamo to select the inputs because it's actually sourcing Dynamo to get this node. So it will actually boot up Dynamo Core first. But it should give us access to those elements. And there's things like select model element, booleans, all sorts of things available. But there you go. So you can see that we've got our 2 sheets to pick from. Looks like there's only 2 sheets in this model, which is quite interesting. And sure that sure enough there is. And we can rerun our script. You can see it takes no time to process. It's running as fast as Dynamo, essentially. It's not running at the speed of Dynamo Player, which is great because it's actually running Dynamo in the background. So it's faster than Dynamo Player, if anything. But you can see there that we're still getting the same result. Okay, so now we're going to look at packaging these scripts differently. So what I'm going to do is actually focus on the set of scripts that I've already built. So I'll just go to my work in progress toolbar folder. So I've got 5 scripts here, essentially. So I've got 3 scripts that relate to a door workflow from another previous video I did, where essentially I select all my doors, I populate some parameters of those doors, and then I audit the ones that didn't have a proper to and from room. What I'm going to do is package these into folders, because I'm essentially going to run out of this folder. So I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm just going to call this doors. And what this is going to represent is essentially what you want to call your panel that your tools are going to belong to. For example, settings or project location. I'm also just going to chuck in 2 ordinary tools, just an addition tool and a markup tool, which aren't going to do anything special. They're just there to make the toolbar look a bit more busy. So what I'm going to do is just call these miscellaneous. And I'm just going to move these. And what I might do first is just give them a number, because one thing I have found is that you do actually need to make sure that none of your scripts have the same name. They all have to be unique names. So one way I found you can do this is just by having numbers in their name. So you can do 2, then 2.1 to sort of group your scripts under their respective ribbon. It does mean that your tools will have numbers in their name as buttons. So it's really up to you just how you control this process. But this is at least my way I've chosen to use to control them. I'll just make this the third button, and I'll make this the second button. And these are all Dynamo scripts, remember. Okay, so I'm just going to move these in here. And what you also need is the icons that you want to use for these elements. So in this case, I've just made a little set of icons to use. So I'll just go and I'll put addition and markup in here, and they need to match the name of the Dynamo script. This is how the tool is going to connect those two together when it selects a logo to use. I haven't really found a good logo size that works well. I've just found that you may want to make your images a little bit smaller so that you can see what they're going to look like when they get downscaled into the ribbon. I'll just put these in my door folder, and again, I'll just copy their names. So there is a fair bit of work in just sort of setting up the infrastructure. But what I might do next is just get these into action. So at the moment I've got two sets of scripts. I've got some icons and just some folders for them. For now, that'll do. What I'm going to do is just copy my path here, and I'm just going to open Dino browser. And I'm going to open workspace, oh no, not workspace storage. I'm going to go to settings. And I'm just going to remove this path. So you can have multiple paths. You don't just have to have one folder that all your scripts come from. But I'm just going to go toolbar, work in progress. And now we can see our folders. So we have doors and we have miscellaneous. And we can see that our Dynamo scripts are basically sitting in each line item. So pretty cool. At the moment I have no inputs or outputs defined in these scripts. They just run. Except for the addition one. You can see here I made an example of just some inputs for this particular scenario. But this is at least how Dino browser packages them. But we want to make a ribbon out of them. So we're going to actually have to set up a toolbar. So in order to do this, we're going to go right click, and we're going to do open buttons file. And if there's no buttons file, it will create one. Looks like we failed. That's always nice. I might just try rebooting Revit. I've never actually seen a fatal error on the back of this program. That's very interesting. So maybe there's some stability challenges. It may have created the buttons file anyway. Yeah, it has. So see this little txt file? It's basically made a template that we can use to direct the plugin buttons. It looks like it didn't manage to write the contents of it, so it seemed to struggle. It seemed to struggle with writing that particular file. Again, I haven't seen it do that before. I have been playing with this quite a bit, so that's quite surprising. I might just delete this and just try again. I found sometimes some plugins do have some instabilities, even if sort of only temporary. Maybe they happen from time to time, but that was quite surprising. But yeah, I'll just try that again. So you'll notice again that Dino browser will have to start up Dynamo before it does anything. I think what might be the cause is I don't think you're meant to keep empty folders in the repositories for these elements. So what I might do is just move those out. And now all I have is Dynamo scripts and two folders containing them. So I'll try that instead and see if that solves my issue. I think that might be the cause because I haven't done that before, so that could be why. So we'll go Dino, toolbar work in progress. Okay. And then we'll just try creating that buttons file again. Interesting, it doesn't seem to like this folder. What I might do instead is I'm going to manually write the buttons file instead. So I'll just go to their website and show you how they recommend to write the buttons file. Meanwhile, I'll just boot up Revit in the background. So if you go to their website and you go to the Dino manual, they have a pretty thorough section about how you need to set everything up. So at the moment, this is essentially the format for a buttons file. So if I copy this and paste this, I'll just open up the buttons file that it's created in Notepad, and I'll paste that. So essentially this is the whole tab. So you can have multiple tabs for your tools in case your tools stretch over more than one. In this case, we're just going to have one tab, and I'll just call this Aussie BIM Guru Tools. And then we're just going to make sure that the comma is taken out if you're doing one line. And what you want to do now is just call on the name of your scripts. So you will literally need to just copy and paste them in apostrophes. So we'll just go and get those names. So I know this is taking a little while, but I do want to show you all how this is meant to work, so that you can actually go off and try it out yourself. Because it took me a little while to figure this out, so I figured I may as well show you how to do it properly, so that those that have the time and the patience to watch through this will get a reward for doing so, hopefully. And it doesn't really matter what order you do these in, because they're going to group themselves based on the subfolders that you've put them in. What I'll do is I'll just save my buttons file, and I might just reboot Revit, because that's the only challenge with these toolbars. They need to reboot. If you make any changes to them, you need to reboot Revit for the changes to be recognized, because essentially they're loaded when Revit opens. That's part of the loading process. But what we should see is our toolbar show up once Revit boots up. I believe it should come up before we even open Dyno. I think it's part of Dyno booting up. Interesting. Maybe it's actually when we open the model. That might be when it happens. I just found it hard to get the home tab back. There we go. I'll try opening a model and see when Dino boots up, if it boots up the ribbon. That might be what it needs. As you can see, I'm still quite new to this, so I'm figuring out all the behaviors and the idiosyncrasies of the program as well. But I believe that it should boot up a ribbon once it sees the buttons file. I'll just cross-check the structure of one of my finished ones. Yeah, so my finished one does have that. It's interesting that it hasn't actually loaded the toolbar. What I might do is just try and save it as a different format. So I believe that it expects it to be encoded as a UTF-8 format. So I'll just try saving over it and see if I have luck with that. There is a particular method on the website that it forces you to follow. It looks like the structure of my file is okay, because that's a finished one, so I'm just comparing it. Yeah, that looks correct. Okay. I'll just try rebooting Revit once. You will find that you'll be rebooting Revit quite a lot when you test. I guess anyone that develops plugins will know that as well. When they're trying to repackage their DLLs and modify their program, they will know that they have to keep rebooting Revit to see the changes that happen to their plugin. So that can be quite challenging. So you will sort of have the same sort of development challenges that you'd see elsewhere when you work with this. So it's good training, if anything, if you want to become an app developer. Interesting, I still can't see my toolbar. I might just double check that Dino has had a chance to remember where my scripts are. That could be what's happening as well. Maybe because I'm crashing out, it doesn't have a chance to save that path. So I'll try setting that path again. Yeah, it hasn't remembered, that's why. So I'm just going to add that path again. Okay, so that seems to remember it. So what I might do is just save, and then I'll try, okay, I'm in a read-only file. That could also have something to do with it. I'll save it to my desktop. And again, we're going to reboot Revit to see if it can remember what we're doing. So ideally, it should remember the paths that you tell it to remember between opening and closing Revit. It should store that data, and then it should boot up the ribbons once it remembers where they are. But it's all part of that boot up process. So fingers crossed, we'll see our ribbon show up once Revit gets started. Let's have a look. Great. And there we go, there's our ABG tools, and you can see that there's our scripts. They're essentially sitting there ready to be run. So I'll just show you the most basic script out of all of them before I show you how to tweak some of the what they call presets. So these are things like automatically selecting all the elements you have selected in Revit as your input in Dynamo for Dino. So thanks to people that waited that out. I know that was probably a little bit painful to watch, but we got there in the end. I think it's important to see all the things that do and don't work, so you get a better feel for what it's like to work within this program, and then it's less frustrating when you come across the same problems. Okay, so I'm just gonna probably move Dino browser off into the project browser. You can actually dock Dino in here like a window, so it's pretty cool. And you can also just not have Dino open at all if you want. So let's go to my ABG tools. You can see there's my icons all packaged, and they're in this panel on this ribbon. So that sort of shows you how the structure of the buttons file influences the structure of the ribbon. Let's just run one of the most basic tools out of all of them. In this case, this one's just called markup, and all it does is it takes the selected elements using a node from the rhythm package, from the springs package, and it takes those elements as its input, and then it makes them red. That's all it does. So what you can do is just select your elements with a script like this. And again, this is a pretty basic script, so I won't show how to build it. If you need to know how to build it, just let me know. Click, and the script should run. And there you go. You can see these elements have now become red. So that's pretty much all the script does. And it's a little bit like Dynamo Play in that it refreshes every time. So you can see I can run it again, and there's my note's red now too. So it's pretty intuitive. It's pretty easy to use. I found that it's pretty fast as well. I am running on a remote desktop session here, so that makes it look a little bit more clunky than it really is. I have found you'll need to be a little bit patient with your scripts. You don't want to just click off the button straight away and keep working. I find you need to just give it a few seconds in order to hold on to the selection that you've made in Revit if your script works that way. What I might do now is just show you some more creative things you can do with it. I guess I'll show you just one other more powerful script I made, which is just selects all the doors in the active view. And there you go. You can see I've just picked all my doors in my active view with one button click. So pretty powerful. But I'll just show you how to change the way that the script sources its inputs, which is using presets. So I'm just going to go and create a presets file from Dino. So I'm just going to open up my markup script. And what I might do first is just do open presets file by right clicking on it. So this is essentially the preset of how the script works. So by default, the preset is that it won't force itself to reopen. The preset is implied upon the script by the name of the preset file, and it's a DPR file, it's a special file type. So this should be located now in the same folder as my script. So if I go to my miscellaneous folder, you can see there's my presets file. And we're going to call these presets, and our first preset, let's just call this let's just call this active selection. And we'll keep the force reopen clause, but we're going to take another clause instead. So I'm just going to go back to the Dino website. I just want to find the syntax for taking an active selection. So I'll show you where they've located all of their syntaxes. So I'm not going to show you the syntax for every single input or method that they have. I think it's a lot better just to show you where the information's located, and then you can play with it. So we'll just go down to the preset file structure. And I believe there should be a big list of the presets. Just a bit further up in the preset section. There we go. So this is basically every sort of syntax they have for presets. So I'm just going to copy this piece of text here. Use selected semicolon select elements. So what this one is going to do is it's going to go and find the select model elements node that you leave open in your script, and it's going to use this as the source, but it's going to give all the selected Revit elements automatically instead. So I'm just going to copy that selection. I think I've actually got it on hand in a preset template already. So I'm just going to take this line here. Note that there's a comma. That's really important. So I'm just going to copy that line there. It's important to keep all these curly braces in the same format. You can actually have more than one preset as well if you so choose. The syntax for that, I believe, is on the website, or it's in their video demos. They have videos on their website as well where they show sort of how some of these things are, so I don't want to focus on them too much. But essentially you can have more than one preset in the way your script runs. So you could say active selection or only all the walls. You could have different things that you can define within Dynamo by defining some presets, which is pretty impressive. Another use that I've thought of for it is in batch renaming scripts. You could say all the views or all the sheets. There's different ways you can set these things up. For example, you could use a true-false boolean as your preset. So if it's sheets, it's true. If it's views, it's false. and use it to define a gate or a logic pathway that only sends through the sheets or the views depending on which one you pick as your preset. But in this case, we're just going to use selected elements. So I'm just going to save my presets file, and I'm just going to go and modify my script as well, because at the moment it's using a custom node. So I'm just going to open in Dynamo. So we're going to eliminate the need for a custom node to select all elements. And I'll also show you a more complex toolbar I set up at the end as well that has a few more tools in it to show you just some ideas and potential for the tool. But hopefully this is getting you as excited as it did actually get me excited when I saw this. So at the moment we're using a collect current selection node from Spring Nodes. Instead, I'm just going to get a select model elements, and I think it's select model elements, not select model element, but I just might cross check that. So I'm just going to notepad again, and I'll just double check. Yeah, select model elements. So we'll get a select model elements, and I'll just reconnect my input here instead. And I'll just leave this empty because this is essentially where it's going to find the match. So I'll close Dynamo, and I'll need to rescan my workspace storage, and see there, now we have a preset that's become part of the way that the tool works. We just have one at the moment. So what I might do is just close Revit again. I know this is getting a little bit repetitive. We're only going to hopefully close it one more time after this, just to show you a more advanced ribbon that I've put together. So this one should now have a preset available, and presets will override the button itself. So essentially, like you don't need the button to be pressed, you'll just get a little drop down list instead. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'll just open up this sample project. And we should get our ribbon, which we do. And now we should end up with a preset that we can see instead of just a button. So I'll show you what that looks like. Note that Dino browser remembers its location like the project browser would when you run it typically. So it's got a lot of residual memory of how you want it to behave or operate. So it's really smart. And there you go. Now see, we get this little drop down here. So if I click on this, instead it prompts a little drop down menu. So if you had multiple presets, they'd form separate rows for the tools. And obviously now when I run this, it will run based on the active selection instead. So you don't need to use that custom node. So I'll just do markup under ABG tools. And it should source my current selection. And there you go. You can see that it still works the same way. Notice there that when I selected my element, by default it jumps to the modify tab. So that's a little bit annoying. Let's go check something out that's pretty cool. So I'm just going to go to keyboard shortcuts. Let's look for the markup tool. Remember, the markup tool is just a Dynamo script that I've set up. So these are actually now available to have shortcuts assigned to them. So that's really powerful too. So I can just say for markup, I want to do MU. And now I don't even need to go to my ribbon. I can just call on my Dynamo script with a shortcut. So I just typed MU then. And there you go. You can see that my markup tool is now operating as a shortcut. So super powerful to have Dynamo scripts available at a keystroke without even needing to open Dynamo or Dynamo Player. Pretty amazing. And just having the visual ability to package a ribbon for your users is brilliant as well. It's so friendly, so much easier to use. So then say Dynamo Player. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open a different workspace. So I'm just going to open a toolbar that I've actually been working on myself under toolbar finished. I believe if I just OK here, and you'll see it's a little bit more complicated. I've got 4 sections. I've got one called about, one called door to from, one called miscellaneous, and one called rename. So one of these I'm actually going to be using what's called data shapes to bring up a user interface to get some more complicated inputs. I'm also going to show you one where I've made 2 presets. So you can see here I have 2 instances of websites. One of them is going to be a button that opens up Google, and the other one's going to be a button that opens up the Dynamo forums, which I've packaged into a Dynamo script with a bit of Python. So pretty fun. So I'm going to close one more time and reopen, and we should get my current ribbon that I'm working on. And I'll show you just how fun some of these things can be to use versus doing things manually or having to open Dynamo and watch it, get a bit clunky. So we'll reboot one more time. It should boot up our toolbar. And then when we open the model, it will boot up Dino. So you can see AVG tools, which is also what I called my finished toolbar, just to make things confusing. And Dino will boot up the Dynamo core. And once it's booted up, we should be able to have a bit of a play with our toolbar. So pretty exciting. So thanks for anyone that's hanging around this long. And there you go, you can see that's my toolbar. So one thing I've put together is using Rhythm. I've made a simple user message. If I click on my About node, it will bring up a little message that talks about the toolbar and says, thanks for downloading my toolbar. Here's my email. Any issues, read the README. So that's pretty common for like a plugin to have those sort of little READMEs or versioning scripts. So that's just a little tiny Dynamo script. Note I've got two presets here. I've got Google or the Dynamo forums. Let's just open the Dynamo forums. If I run this, a Python script is going to run, which opens up a website. And in this case, the different thing that's being fed through is the strings for the website URLs. So if I go to my finished toolbar in my About tab, and I go to my presets file for my websites, you'll see that I'm feeding through Google or I'm feeding through the Dynamo URL. And it's all just depending on whether I'm picking the preset of Google or forums in this case. So pretty cool. As well as that, I've made a bunch of icons using Photoshop, so they look quite nice. What I might do is just run a couple of other more complex scripts. I'll run this one here, which is basically going to take the active selection. So I'll select all my doors, and this script will essentially highlight any doors that do not have a to and a from. I've used the door rooms node from Clockwork in order to build this Dynamo script. And I've also got a little prompt at the end from Rhythm that tells you how many issues were found, which is 6. I found if you put a message at the end, it's better because the user knows when the script is done. So in this case, once it says 6 issues are found, that's at the end of my script. And I can see that I've now highlighted any doors that maybe don't have a to and from in orange. As well as that, I can run my addition one. All it does is a sum and tells me what it is. The result is 20. So not really a logical script. And again, the markup one is there. The last one I'll show you is one where I've used data shapes. So this script essentially lets you select a string within the view names of your model and swap out that string for something else. So let's say every time we say floor, we actually want to say level. So I'm going to run my script for rename views, and I should get a user interface from data shapes. So this is a really good way to collect inputs from a user that are more complex. I'm just going to do all my views, and I want to replace floor with level. I'll just click on replace, and the script has found 8 successful matches and swapped them out, and 0 failed. So it's just all about how you build the script. You can see that now all my views, floor has been replaced with level. So super powerful. There's so much potential for what you can do with this. I really hope it works in Revit 2020. I haven't been able to test it or hear from the company, but I mean, this has such a bright future in, I think, not needing people to use C# or Python in order to package their scripts into a deployable toolbar. Sorry. Because you can imagine if this is on a server location and you configure everyone's copy of Dino to read the same location and they have the same custom packages, you can essentially package the toolbar the same way. It's very, very powerful. So yeah, I look forward to seeing what people are able to sort of do with this tool, and hopefully it gets you a bit excited like it did for me. So thanks for watching that long. If anyone did, there were a few bugs along the way, but we got there in the end. Definitely feel free to leave any comments or queries down below about the package. I'm still learning it at the moment, but I can see a lot of potential for it. I'm really looking forward to seeing what I can do with it. And I make videos about 2 to 3 times a week, so feel free to follow and subscribe if you're not already, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Happy script building, and hope you enjoy your toolbars. I know I will. Thanks. Take care. Bye.